Hey guys, Sonora here. Got another video today, and we're going to be talking about what it means to speak your truth. What we do here on the channel is help people find their truth. So, in my experience, when I first started down this journey to self-discovery, I did not know what it meant to speak my truth. A lot of people were telling me, oh, you got to speak your truth, you got to speak your truth, find your truth. And I was mildly embarrassed, to say the least, to admit that I didn't really know what that meant. So, at a surface level, to speak your truth, I guess you could say I was thinking it was more or less saying no when you wanted to say no instead of saying yes just to be agreeable. Or if it was something as simple as somebody asks you where you want to go for dinner, and you don't really say where you want to go because you're trying to be agreeable, right? So as a recovering codependent, doing things such as that were uncomfortable for me. So when I was asked, oh, did you want to go to dinner? Sure. Well, where do you want to go? I don't care, wherever you want, was my typical answer. Well, if I'm not one to eat sushi and we ended up at a sushi restaurant, that you could see where that would snowball into an effect of misery for me in the long run. But at any rate, I guess that's what I took speak your truth to mean. So, as you know, every concept or cognitive behavior that we discuss always has several layers to it. So, at a surface level, that is one way to speak your truth. A big way for someone who's codependent to start to speak their truth is to say no when you want to say no. As codependents, you tend to say yes to everything. Why is that? Well, when you're growing up and you are made to feel ignored or devalued in any way, then you tend to become agreeable just to be included. At a subconscious level, way deep down inside, we all feel the need to be accepted. And if giving our opinions or voicing our likes and dislikes is met with any level of resistance or any level of criticism, then you tend to start to shut those things down. And this is where you start to hide your truth. And then at another level, you start to take on other people's truths as your own. So I keep using this word truth. And really, in the reality that we live in, truth is a matter of perception. So I hate that we have to use the word truth, but I guess you could say finding and speaking your authentic self would be another way to say it. So I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Runaway Bride. I bring this movie up because it was kind of a game changer for me in a lot of ways. Now, on top of the fact that people my age, or women, I should say my age for the most part, have seen this movie. It was back in the 90s. It was a romantic comedy. It was Julia Roberts and Richard Gere, I believe. At any rate, the plot to the movie is that Julia Roberts is this bride, and she leaves her grooms standing at the altar. All right, she accepts a marriage proposal and gets all the way to the wedding part and then never shows up, just runs away, right? Hence the name Runaway Bride. So the funny part of this movie, and the part that kind of stuck with me, is Richard Gere is a is a journalist. He hears about this woman who keeps leaving men at the altar, right? And he decides he's going to do a story on it. So he goes to all the different places that she had been, right? Follows the path that she took, and interviews all these men that were left standing at the altar. And they're all still in love with her and devastated by the fact that she didn't show up, um, because she was the perfect woman for them, right? And if you think about it, how could one woman be so perfect for all these different men, right? So I think you can see where I'm going here. At any rate, the comedic part of the movie is Richard Gere somehow ends up asking all of these men the same question, which is, what kind of eggs does she like? How does she take her eggs? And every one of these men had a different answer. For one man, it was she liked eggs Benedict. For another one, she liked scrambled eggs. For another one, it was over medium. Whatever. Anyway, the point being was, at a subconscious level, Julia Roberts' character didn't really know what kind of eggs she liked because she kept conforming to her fiancés at the time because she was trying to be agreeable. She was trying to be the woman that they wanted her to be instead of being the woman that she was. So that is my long-winded way of saying Julia Roberts' character in that movie did not speak her truth. So when she went out to breakfast with a fiance and she went to order her eggs, she ordered whatever they ordered. She didn't order what she wanted. The interesting part of this whole thing is, at a subconscious level, did she even know what kind of eggs she liked? And at the end of the movie, one of the scenes is Richard Gere takes her to a restaurant and he orders eggs made every different way, and she tries each one of them. And the point being, she's supposed to figure out what kind of eggs she likes for herself for no other reason than she liked eggs. So if we take that kind of parable metaphor of knowing what kind of eggs you like, then I guess Julia Roberts finding out that she liked, I don't even remember what the answer was in the movie, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say it was scrambled eggs. Um, Saying that she liked scrambled eggs would have been equivalent to speaking her truth. Um, all of us are born with likes and dislikes. All of us are born with um, talents and interests and things that we find interesting and passionate, um, that maybe don't agree with those people around us who are raising us or who are influential in our lives when we're little. And when those things don't line up and they don't match, and we're kind of like outside the box of the traditional, um, what is the word I want to say? The traditional thoughts, beliefs, likes, and dislikes of the family that you're born into, then you have a tendency to be um, somewhat ostracized, I guess you could say. And not, I don't say that to mean that your family is mean. Say that to mean that most people are afraid of anything that's different from themselves. Why is that? Well, if it's different from me, then it could mean that one of us is wrong, right? We live in a world of duality where there's black and white, there's right and wrong, there's good and bad. And we're raised to believe and to learn that the way our parents did it, the way that they taught us, is the right way. What I've learned is that's not always the case, right? What is that saying? There's more than one way to skin a cat. Well, when you start to explore those differences and you start to really voice your opinions and stand out, then people get, I don't want to say nervous, but they get threatened, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the phenomenon is because I'm not a therapist, so I can't tell you that this is psychologically this or psychologically that, because I don't know. This is just knowledge from my experience in in my journey of self-healing. So I think people get intimidated, they get scared, they get um I don't know what the word is, but it's that feeling of, I might be wrong or I might be different. And I don't want to be different. I want to fit in. I want to be accepted by the masses. And I think in today's day and age, there's less of that going on. I think there's more people that are willing to stand out. There's more people that are willing to dance to the beat of their own drum and be proud of that and not judge anyone else for that, which I think is the key here, right? Um, I think most of us are fine with voicing our opinion or saying we do or don't like scrambled eggs, as the case may be, but they don't want to be judged for it. And therein lies the key, right? So when we think that we might be judged, I think most of us have a tendency to judge ourselves first. We kind of try to read the room, if you will, and see what people are going to think about us, and if that's something that our psyche, our conscious, our inner selves can take, and um, whether or not we want to fight that battle, really. And I think in the past it used to be a battle. It used to be something that was more of a conflict than it is in today's day and age. And when people can lay their swords down and stop judging each other, um, people are freer to be who they truly are, who their authentic selves truly are, and let that shine and let that show. And then, of course, there's more collaboration, there's more peace in the world, if you will. Um, but all that has to start with not judging yourself. Well, how do you not judge yourself? Well, we are brought up to judge ourselves. So it's a subconscious behavior that we have to just kind of unravel and trace back those beliefs to where we think they may have originated. Okay, so let me think. I'm trying to think of a really good example because I feel like I'm talking in circles here. But, okay, example. Not the best example, but it's the only one I got. Growing up, my mom was um, very concerned with her weight. She was diagnosed anorexic and bulimic when I was very little. And so she had a subconscious need to be thin. And there's many psychological factors that go into how that disease manifests, and I won't get into that again. I'm not a therapist, not here to tell you anything about anorexia at all, other than the fact that I grew up with a mom who had it. Being that she had these ideas of what the perfect weight was and what beauty was in her mind, um, she, of course, taught my sister and I that belief. So growing up, we were very focused on our weight and our looks. And again, not saying it's right or wrong, not saying it's good or bad, it just was. Um, in my later years, I discovered that that was a belief that was not mine. I don't choose anymore to judge people based on their looks and weight. I did for a long time. I was taught that. I didn't know any different. I judged myself harshest of all. Um, and I know you guys can't really see on the video, it's kind of shoulders up, whatever, but I'm not, I'm not a size 2, nor will I ever be. And that's okay. And it's taken me a really long time to be able to accept that and be proud of that and not beat myself up for the fact that I'm not on the cover of Vogue as a size 2 model. Um, and it would be showing my hypocrisy if I were to continue to judge myself if I didn't judge others, and it would be the same hypocrisy if I judged others and not myself for that said thing. When I realized that it was a belief that was created for me and ingrained in me by someone who had a what is the word I want to say? Had a I don't want to say damaged. It was a inaccurate idea of what that meant as a person, right? Um, to be thin in my family was something that we all strived for. To be attractive and not overweight, for lack of a better way to say it. Slender was something that was at the top of the list. When we got together as a family and we hadn't seen somebody in a really long time, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, did you see so and so? I saw him the other day. I hadn't seen him in years. He's put on a lot of weight." Or I saw so and so the other day and haven't seen her in years, and man, she looks good. She lost so much weight. Their weight and their appearance was always the first thing that was referred to when referring to that person. I started noticing this a few years back, and I thought, how odd. And I started kind of taking note of other people outside of my family to see if that was normal, right? Was this common amongst people? It really is not, to be honest. And it struck me as very profound that it was so uncommon. And I think that's when I started to understand what speak your truth is, right? Your truth starts with what you're taught. Um, when you're little, you don't know. When you don't know. I mean, think about how many 1-year olds when they're potty training and running around the house naked and they have no shame. They're taught shame. I can remember yelling at my granddaughter, go put some clothes on, because there was people in the house and she's running around naked at 2 years old and she has no idea why she's in trouble. And not that she was in trouble, but um, it's just not something that you do. It's not socially acceptable at a cultural level. Running around naked in your home with other people there is not acceptable for a 2-year-old little girl. And she was then introduced to the theory and the idea of shame. Not that um, she should be ashamed of that, but well, anyway, you get the idea. Point being, we start to take on these belief systems that are not ours, they're taught to us. So when you have a trigger in your life, when something bothers you, and a trigger, let me explain what that means real quick. So a trigger is something that will solicit a reaction from you that doesn't match the situation. If you, for lack of a better way to say it, lose your shit over something really small, that's a trigger. That means that you are reacting to a situation that is not the situation in front of you. You're reacting to a situation from your past. It's something you haven't dealt with. It's something that you need to deal with. And that's why they call it a trigger. So when you're triggered like that, the trick is to trace it back to that belief that you were taught. It's kind of your subconscious way of telling you this isn't your belief. This was something you were taught, and it's not for you. I'm not telling you it's right. I'm not telling you it's wrong. I'm just telling you it's not for you. It's not your truth. So truth can come in many boxes, if you will. For example, go back to the example with my mom. The thinner you were, the more accepting she was of you. It's just the way it was. Um, if you were taught that, in fact, my son and I were talking about this yesterday. My generation grew up where children were seen and not heard. So, for example, my mom used to have coffee with her girlfriend every Sunday, and Mrs. Twist, and she would bring her son over, our neighbor, and we would sit and color, but we would have to color in another room because adults were talking and children had to leave the room. That was just how it was. There was never a time when I didn't call Mrs. Twist Mrs. Twist. I never called her by her first name up until the day she passed away. And I personally felt it was uncomfortable to use her first name, even as an adult. And again, it was the generation I grew up in. We were taught that anybody older than us, we referred to them as either aunt or uncle or Mr. or Mrs. with their last name. You never, ever called someone by the first name if they were older than you. It was a respect for elders thing. When my kids were growing up, it kind of changed a little bit where kids weren't banished to the back room when adults were talking. They were expected, however, to stay quiet and to not interrupt adults, but they could be in the room. So we're kind of like, you could see where the belief systems start to change a little bit, right? And I don't know why. I don't know what changed. I don't know if it was a conscious decision that I made as a parent to allow that to happen. Um, Either way, it just was. The other change that I noticed in raising my kids was that we no longer called, or we no longer asked our kids to call our friends by Mr. and Mrs. whatever last name. It was Miss or Mr. and the first name. So it's kind of getting a little more intimate with the titles that we used when referring to other people. So, for example, my neighbor's name was Diane, and they would call her Miss Diane and not Mrs. Hutto. Um, and I think to this day, and my daughter, yeah, because we were just there last year, and my daughter to this day, at the age of 27, still calls her Miss Diane. Again, it's one of those uncomfortable things. It's just she's never called her by her first name without the word Miss before it, and probably felt it was uncomfortable to do so. Um, to this day, I call my aunts and uncles by aunt and uncle. To call them by the first name without that title in front of it is just uncomfortable to me. And I feel personally, for me, for my truth, that it is incredibly disrespectful to not use their title first. Is that true for everyone? Probably not. Is it the diehard um, marker for disrespect? Absolutely not. Is it my truth for me? Would I feel that I was being disrespectful without using those titles first? Yes. For me, that is my truth. So that is what I would equate to speaking my truth and knowing my truth. Did it come from me? No, probably not. I'm sure it was something my parents taught me. But after analyzing it and sitting with it and chewing on it and asking myself, is it disrespectful not to use aunt or uncle in front of someone's name? And when I decided for myself that the answer was yes, I discovered it to be my truth. So that is what it means to speak your truth. If I had an aunt or uncle that maybe I felt was not worthy of my respect, I might drop that title off of it. And they probably would never even know. But for me, speaking my truth, you're not worthy of my respect. Therefore, you don't get the aunt or uncle in front of it. Um, Another way to speak your truth, again, I think we talked about in the beginning, is say yes only when you want to say yes. If you are exhausted, I'll give you a really good example. This happened a few months back. A friend of mine and I had made plans to get together on like a Friday or something. And it was Thursday when we made those plans. And I woke up on Friday and I was exhausted. I hadn't slept well. I didn't feel good. I didn't get up right away. I was supposed to be at her house at 12 as promised, and it was like 11:30, and I was still kind of just shuffling around the house, drinking coffee, trying to wake up. The old me, who did not speak her truth, would have dragged myself into the car and driven to her house and had a miserable afternoon. The new me that spoke my truth called her and said, "Look, I know we had plans. I'm really sorry. My energy's drained. I don't know what's going on, but I need a day to myself. Can we reschedule?" She did not have a problem with that. She didn't feel devalued. She didn't feel rejected. I didn't feel resentful, because that's the only true feeling that comes from saying yes when you want to say no, is resentment. And in the end, I ended up going over on that Sunday and we had a beautiful day. I didn't feel bad. She didn't feel bad. I got the rest I needed and everybody was happy in the end. That goes a very different way if I had dragged myself to her house that day. So I spoke my truth. I didn't want to go. I didn't feel up to going. And I voiced that without judgment, without anger, without making anybody feel bad. And I was authentic with that word. With what I told her, I could have come up with a million excuses and said, "Oh, the dogs are sick," or "Oh, this came up or that came up," and blah, 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 and lied. And then I still would have felt bad. But instead, I was impeccable with my word. And you guys have heard me talk about the 4 agreements left and right. And I will continue to promote that book. I actually just read The Fifth Agreement, which was even more phenomenal. I highly recommend that you read it, but if you don't, that's cool too, I guess. At any rate, speaking your truth is something that will definitely cure or help cure, get you on the path of recovering if you are codependent. Um, if you are the other side of that stick of empath traits that we talk about, then I guess you could say the opposite of codependent would be a narcissist. I hate using that word. I think it's a buzzword lately, and I think it's way overused, and I think attached to anybody that um, opposes you. I think people that have any opposition with someone, they will automatically jump to the word narcissist. But anyway, um, I can't change what people think about what this word means. But basically, the narcissist means that they're not self-aware. They don't look at their own faults. They're not accountable for anything, and it's not a bad thing. So, a narcissist is as much unable to speak their truth as a codependent person. At the end of the day, if everyone was more self aware, knew themselves at a core level, was willing to explore their own subconscious, willing to look at themselves and take accountability for their own environment, for their own circumstances, understanding that karma is nothing more than cause and effect, understanding that they're not being punished by some force outside of themselves, they're simply a result of the choices that they've made. And again, both on the codependent and the narcissism side, then you can learn to balance those two energies, right? Because we all have a level of codependent, we all have a level of narcissist, and there's light and dark, there's good and bad, there's up and down, there's tails and heads on a coin. So at no point is anyone on the planet going to tell me that they don't have some narcissistic qualities or some codependent qualities, unless they are perfectly integrated, perfectly at balance, and perfectly zen. And I'm pretty sure there was only, what, 2 or 3 people in the world that ever happened with, and one was Jesus and the other was Buddha. So unless those are your names, chances are you have a level of narcissism and you have a level of codependency that exists within you, and that's okay. It's not bad. It's bad when you're not aware of it and you put yourself in a spot where you are miserable. Why are you miserable? Because you're not in balance. You're not understanding that you have the power to change your circumstances with the choices that you're going to make. How do you do that? How do you find that happiness? By speaking your truth. How do you speak your truth? Well, first you got to find it. And therein lies the trick. Recently I spent 33 days and I didn't leave the house. My son had unexpectedly left the home. I found myself alone in the home and just me and my 3 dogs. And I rested for 33 days. And the first couple days were okay. By the third and fourth day, I started to have a guilt. I started to feel like I should be doing more. I should do something. I should go here. I should go there. I should blah, blah, blah. And I had decided at that point to remove the word should from my vocabulary. Should and need. As far as that goes, I don't use in my vocabulary anymore. I was raised to believe that not doing anything for 33 days was lazy. In my research, I learned that resting for 33 days after spending 50 years in survival mode was a necessary evil, I guess, if you will, and not even an evil. I had to trace back. Why am I so uncomfortable? Why is this not okay in my head? Why do I feel bad for doing what I need to do? What my body told me I needed to do, what my mind told me I needed to do. Because it was a belief that I had been taught growing up. If you slept past 7 a.m., you were lazy. If you didn't leave the house every day, you were lazy. If you didn't work every day, you were lazy. And lazy was presented as a bad thing. It was a bad quality to have. It was not a quality that we aspired to have when I was a child. And now I've learned that lazy is just a word. It's not good, bad, or otherwise. It's just a word. Um, and it's not a word I used to use. I choose to use anymore because all that does is hi Dakota. All that does is convince people that resting is bad. And when we don't rest, when we don't get our proper rest, then we're not at our best. We can't make good decisions. We can't think clearly. We can't, I don't know, connect with other people in a way that's authentic, in a way that's true, because we're too tired. So that is my rant about speaking your truth. Um, there's a lot of layers to it, guys, and we'll do more videos about it. I think at the beginning of your journey, if you're told to speak your truth, start by practicing saying no when you want to say no. Say yes when you want to say yes. Ask for things that you need. Ask for help. That's another big one. Um, if you need help and you're not asking, you're not speaking your truth. And once you start to speak your truth and you say your no's when you mean no, and you say yes when you mean yes, and you ask for help when you need it, and you allow yourself the time to rest when you need to, you're going to start to see a huge shift in your attitude, in your energy, in your overall motivation, in your happiness. But at the end of the day, that's all we're here to do. We came here to be happy. We came here to learn, to expand, to grow, and to be happy. So I'm going to leave it there, and we will talk again soon.